Right size. Okay, yeah. Yeah, thanks for Farhad and Dayong to give an opportunity to exchange some views on energy policy with all the distinct cohort. I think first things I want to congratulate the two editors as well as the teams for combine a very excellent group of topic and address a very important issue at very critical times. As the Professor Sun Xiansheng mentioned yesterday, is hopefully we think that the book it could be one of the bestseller, and we planning towards that. So I'm very happy to see these things happening. I think we all probably feel that for energy consumer, this is a relative bad times in the past decade or so, because the energy crisis happening in many parts of the world, as well as probably for all us as an individual consumer, we will see our electricity bill and gas bill will increase in the next years also, or even in longer period. So from the energy consumer part, or even consumer country, it's probably one of the worst period in a decade time. But for energy policy researchers, this is probably the best period, at least in the past 5 years or so. I think probably energy policy has never been so highlighted by the global media, as well as debating in all the parliament probably now, if there is a debate at all, because it's we are faced the challenge. And we all know that most of the challenges are coming from the things ongoing, that's energy transition. We are moving towards somewhere which, or put another way, more like an uncharted territory. We was, before we find out the coal and the oil, we was in the low carbon energy, that's the biomass. But now we want to actually back to someone call it the third energy transition or fourth energy transition, depending on how you define, but definitely will be something completely new. Nowadays, our transition towards a world where it's heavily electrified. In the past, we didn't have those things, so we use biomass and others. There isn't a problem, but this kind of electrification and low carbon create a lot of challenges from supplier side, because world have to give up what we are familiar or have been used in the past century and more. That's fossil fuels. And on the other hand, we also have a big challenge for the demand side, how to cope or adapt to the new normality, particularly when the variable renewable energy supply will be the dominant player. What kind of technology are available? If there isn't a technology, before we achieve the carbon neutrality, we don't have the technology hand to cooperate or provide the reliable energy as we want, what will happen? I think that's what we are experiencing now, because the demand and supply side are not moving on the same pace, and the technology are not ready. So we are unfortunate that without the technology progress, we may see these things happen frequently in the future. And I think a particularly good Farhad and Dayong pooling pool of authors from country with different development level. I think that's very, very, very important, because what we bother at the developed country now is talking about reliable, affordable, but we are unfortunately very limited discussion on relatively less developed countries, and they probably still face challenge of access to electricity. And with the increase of electricity price and diminished finance for fossil fuel and others, their access to electricity might be delayed. So what the policy options for developing country? It will again become a very hot topic, I believe. Most of the discussion at this moment think about that, stop finance is good and the fossil fuel is bad, but they didn't consider that why countries, governments, the company choose fossil fuel. I think for some colleagues here from developing country will feel something probably not all the decisions are not rational. There are rational reasons, there are legitimacy behind that. And those things will have to be highlighted. I believe that because the diversified authorship, it will probably address those issues. Particularly, I think when people settle down all those COP26, when the policy of fossil fuel and others settle down, then they have to go back to business, because very soon we are supposed to be judged by the Sustainable Development Goal 2030s. So given the new development challenge, what are the future will be look like for SDG? Should we extend our SDG or delay to SDG 2035 or 2040? But definitely will not be early. It had to be probably delayed. But what is the role for energy policy? I think it's important that we design our supply demand market in such a way that the existing access to reliable and affordable energy will not be compromised. I always think that energy transition or energy policy should be people centrality. We look at how our people, whether in individual jurisdiction or globally, shouldn't be worse off by the energy transition. That's one. And second, very importantly, for underprivileged groups will not be worse off. I think that's more important than the overall reliable and affordability, because when we move to clean energy, that's good for everybody, but some underprivileged people, as I mentioned, it could be actually delay for the access to electricity, or if they are engaged in certain kind of business that rely on traditional energy or traditional fossil fuel source or jobs, there might be further disadvantage. I think that should be a global headline for the policymaker everywhere to think not just your own business, also the business in your neighborhood or some part of the world which are not as privileged as the developing country, only talking about price itself. So I think in that sense, I believe that there are a lot of issues for energy policy research to overcome, and those issues are very important, not just for low carbon itself, for global climate change, but also for the global communication community and the people which we care and we work for. So with that, I think those issues is in my mind as an energy policy research, what I want to share with the group. And also, I think last, I want to show a few slides which we all working on with Farhad and others, or put another way, could be promotion. So Farhad, can you see my screen?
Not yet. It mentioned that you are sharing, but
okay. So I've just wait for this to come in.
Yeah.
Okay, you can see now, right?
Yeah, it's visible.
Yeah. So I think probably when you see the agenda, you notice that there is a logo called ISIS on the top of the agenda and the central sector. I will just briefly mention the International Society for Energy Transition study, which jointly funded by many people here, including Farhad, Dayong, the two editor-chief, and Zhang yesterday. And we also have Professor Sun Xiezheng as the chairman. This is a society was planning almost 2 years ago by Zhang, Dayong, and us. We primarily noticed the challenge will come. At that time, there was no energy crisis yet, but we understand that the energy transition is not an easy job. It's not just the modeling and the numbers. It's about the people, about economy and society. So we feel it's very important to facilitate dialogue among various stakeholders, because the transition task is not just done by policymakers or by researchers. It's actually it had to be an inclusive process. So we propose to create a International Society for Energy Transition Studies, and hopefully to bring people from various areas, government, researcher, industry, NGO, all together to look the way we can achieve more like inclusive and equitable energy transition. So the society has now been established, and you can find the website online, and I welcome all our members here to join the society. To be just a quick mind that when we create a society, we decided that everyone who join will be associate member and will be free of charge, permanent. There will be no membership fee for anyone. The reason we do that because we want the maximum the knowledge sharing of the society. So whoever join can receive the information or can publish here. And I understand particularly some non-academic and particularly those from developed countries will have very difficult access to our prestigious journal articles. But that way we publish for academic. That's the reason we want the society to be open and to be free. So I also actually encourage you during your prepare for the book chapters, if you have a thought, you can publish in ICET website. We have 3 kind of publication, which Dayong is in charge of publication. The co-editor for your book is in charge of the publication side. That is, we have a commentary, which is very short, very sharp views. It could be 300 words. We also have more like a 1,000 to 1,500, more like a policy brief. You want to have a longer opinion idea about some issue, you can submit to us. And also we have working paper. Working paper is essentially your pre-printer or your journal articles or report, other things, which you think they have a value for the global communities. We are happy to publish so everyone can read your knowledge and idea and also facilitate the discussion. And Farhad is the vice president for academic affair. That's been one of the workshop here as well as other events. And Jiqiang yesterday was a vice president for events. Dayong was a vice president for publications. And so we actually also welcome all you to join and play a more active role, or as a volunteer. We don't get any pay. So-called vice president or president, we actually serve the society free of charge. So we welcome whoever are interested and coming even provide more service and more active role. So with that, actually, Farhad, I will conclude my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rock, for your interesting keynote speech and also for introducing ICETs. That I hope today's participants also join ICET, since it is free and we have lots of good activities there. And we would be happy that you contribute to the society. So let's start sessions. So today we are going to have 2 sessions. So session 4 is on energy pricing, energy finance, and sustainable development. So chair is Rock. So Rock, please.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I take the privilege to mention one issue I forgot. Actually, ICES, even we create roughly 8 months, we already have a registered member from 40, I think around 43 countries. It means that more and more people realize and interest. Yeah. So with that, I will start section 4. This section, we have 4 presenters. I heard Rubindra will not be able to make the presentation. We have 4. However, I will still stick with 10 minutes each. I think follow the practice yesterday. I will remind you as the 9 minutes. I have a timekeeper with me, so to make sure. So our first presentation is Liu Zhang, and she will talking about energy subsidy policy. Liu Zhang, the floor is yours.
Hello, Dr. Rock. Can you hear me?
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. Dear doctors, it's my honor to do this presentation. This chapter, energy subsidy policy, and do I need to share my slides?
Yeah, you have slide by lot. Yeah.
Okay. My name is Zhang, and now I'm working at Southwestern University of Finance and Economics in Chengdu. Well, you know, Chengdu is the hometown of Chinese panda with delicious food, hot pot. So welcome to Chengdu. I'm focused on China's fossil fuel subsidy, especially oil and gas pricing reforms. And I also concerned with new energy subsidies such as solar PV and electric vehicles. Therefore, in this chapter, I hope to make a summary for the world's energy subsidy, not just focusing on China fields, which will be a wider scope. Now, let me show the background of this topic. Energy subsidy is a crucial part of energy pricing system. Considering the externality of energy, the public utility property of electricity, we need energy subsidy policy. Practically, regardless of the degree of marketization, most countries have its energy subsidy policies. But subsidies are often criticized because some people believe that most subsidies are ineffective, especially the fossil fuel subsidy policy. Yes. Which are considered light subsidies. Now we are facing the threat of climate change. Many countries make carbon neutral strategies. We hope to promote the development of new energy, and we hope to use subsidy to accelerate the development of renewable. We call for shifting of subsidies from fossil fuels to renewable energy. This chapter will review the world's energy subsidy policy over the past 2 decades. I will concentrate on the change of fossil fuel subsidy policy and renewable energy subsidy policy. In this chapter, I want to offer a view picture of a comprehensive policy to policymakers and researchers, explaining the dynamic evolution of energy subsidy policies in the world. First, I need to provide some general concept. What is energy subsidy? It defines what, it contains what, its necessity and effectiveness. Actually, subsidies can be categorized in different ways, considering the differences in classification standards and the subject of there are some main forms of subsidy: fiscal policy, preferential tax. Some studies have shown that a preferential tax will be better, and the research plan and expected policy implications contain 3 parts. First, we need to know the removal of fossil fuel subsidy policies in industry sector. In commercial sector, we can find some cases. This removal policy without causing shocks on the market. For example, the natural gas pricing reform in China. Here, China can provide some experience. First, is that China is very large with large people and population. The policymakers usually take some pilot errors and do energy pricing reforms. For example, natural gas pricing reform started in 2 provinces and gradually extended to nationwide. Second is the gradual removal of subsidies. It often starts from the industrial sector because the residential sector involves people such as livelihood issues and welfare issues. The third is to implement subsidy reforms when fossil fuel prices falls, especially when oil prices are relatively low. The negative impact will be less. And second, we want to fund the improvement of fossil fuel subsidies for residents. We can fund the optimization experience of energy subsidy in this sector, such as increasing block tariff. There has been a lot of theoretical studies on it. The most important is the detailed issues, such as optimize the pricing of each block. Third, the successful and the frustrated cases of renewable energy subsidy policies, especially in OECD countries, in China, India. We mainly focus on the PV, wind power, and EV subsidy policy. Some cases can provide successful experience in promoting the development of renewable energy. And in addition, when writing this, we need to answer to right subsidy. The fossil fuel price is controlled by the government, often known as the right subsidy. But fossil fuel subsidies are necessary is that it must meet the two goals, such as the efficiency and the fairness. Second, how to gradually remove renewable energy subsidy. Many countries have implemented, especially in the early stage of adoption, when market demand for renewable is limited. With the acceleration of technological progress, we can slowly remove subsidies and reduce market intervention. But special attention should be paid to setting a transparent schedule. Policies should be consistent and stable so as to avoid negative impact on the market. Okay, that's all. Thanks for your listening. I'm very sorry because I have an academic meeting today in another city. And for a while, I will have to take a flight. So I may not be able to listen to the reports of other chapters, but I sincerely wish to read your impressive chapter in the next year. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Liu Chuang, for very good timekeeper. Since you were leaving early, should we actually collect some questions and feedback for you? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So any question feedback? Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Liu, for the chapter, for the presentation. It is interesting. Actually, this is an interesting chapter, and energy subsidy is important. So I have some comments. So in writing the chapter, the full chapter, please focus not only on direct subsidies, but also indirect subsidies. For example, one of the indirect subsidies that is usually neglected is tax. Many fossil fuel-based companies are not taxed very fairly. So this is also making a discrimination and uneven competition between fossil fuel projects and green projects. So not only looking and reviewing the direct subsidies, but also indirect subsidies, including tax. And usually when we are talking about subsidy, the easiest way is removing subsidy, but it is not possible for many less developed countries and for many developing countries, especially those countries which are relying so much on fossil fuels. So if removing subsidies and having real market prices for the fossil fuels, so it will have significant negative impact on the economies. So this is the reason that many governments are not following subsidy targeting or removing subsidies, because of the negative economic impact. So when talking about targeting the subsidies or removing subsidies, both targets, economic growth and sustainability, need to be considered simultaneously. So this is also the second point that please consider in your chapter.
Okay, Dr. Thanks for your comments. I think this suggestion is so important to me, and I will take these contents to my chapter. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, any other comments? Seems no other comments. It's just one comment from me. Yeah, I think that I also did some study on subsidy. I think one of the things when I look back on the results will be that subsidy is not necessary to maximize economic growth or maximize economic growth. There is a social fairness. That's one. And the second, that even subsidy may cause economic growth, but still be prevailing in many countries because it's one of the way to look after people. And when you look after people, you have some income distribution, and subsidy could be one of the way relatively efficiency to distribute the welfare among people or redistribute among people. So that sense that it's not just a purely economic decision. Yeah, just for your reference. Yeah. So if
Dr. Rock.
Yeah, no worries. So I will move to the next presenter. Since Rubindra is not here, so we will move to Oyani, right? Oyani, so it's Energy Policy for Sustainable Development. Yeah, SDG.
Yes. Good day, everyone. I'm so pleased and honored. Just let me share my screen first. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. Good day, everyone. I'm so pleased and honored to be invited as a contributor to such a fantastic chapter development workshop entitled the Handbook of Energy Policy. It's an excellent opportunity to develop a chapter on energy policy for sustainable development, to share what I learned during my PhD degree in international energy policy and improve it accordingly. So today I broke down my speech in 5 sectors. I will start with the problem statement. Research objectives would be the second part. The third part, I will explain the methodology, purpose, structure of the chapter would be the fourth one, and my presentation ends with the expected conclusion. I think the energy policy and sustainable development are really common concepts, so I don't think that I need to explain more about it. But anyway, I will start with the problem statement. As you know, 6 years ago, all countries adopted 17 ambitious policy goals to end poverty, to protect the planet, to promote gender equality, and or ensure prosperity as part of the United Nations Sustainable Development Agenda, and to and promised to achieve specific targets by 2030. Also, we know that energy is at the heart of many of these sustainable development goals, from expanding access to electricity to improving clean cooking fuels, from reducing wasteful energy subsidies to curbing daily air pollution. However, it would be mentioned that based on the stated policy scenario, which released by the International Energy Agency, the world is not on track to encounter the energy-related components of the Sustainable Development Goals, such as achieving universal access to energy, reducing the severe health impacts of air pollution, and tackling climate change. So adopting energy-specific sustainable development goal is a milestone in moving the world towards a more sustainable and equitable system. So for the objectives of this handbook, I should mention that from the survey literature that I consider so far, the most important characteristic of the energy systems and sources that contribute to sustainable development can be listed as renewable, efficiently produced and used, economically, financially viable, secure and diverse, equitable, readily accessible, available, and affordable, has positive social impacts and minimize environmental impacts. This is the characteristic of the energy system that can be considered and have positive impact on sustainable development. On the other hand, the most common energy policies related to the sustainable development could be considered as the imposing taxes on fossil fuels, reforming subsidy to reduce the carbon dioxide emissions, simultaneously generates financial resources for clean energy, investing in energy efficiency, green finance, government support, procurement in promoting the use of renewable energy technologies. So, the main objectives of this chapter is to provide a comprehensive document about energy policy and sustainable development and their interlinkages. Therefore, this chapter intends to identify the influential factors in formulating the sustainable energy policies and also illustrating the appropriate energy policy framework based on the country's situations. So, for example, the economic, social, environmental, institutional, resource availability, whether the country is the energy consumer or importer or energy producers and exporter, because it's they need different energy policy, depends on the country's situations to achieve the goals of sustainable development. So for the methodology, I should mention that unlike the technical paper highlighting the specific case study for the specific audiences, the handbook is more general and similar to the review paper. So this book chapter is a literature-based academic work that will conduct us through review the academic survey literature and review the published guideline and policies by international organizations such as United Nations Development Program, UNDP, International Energy Agency, Global Green Growth Institute, Green Climate Finance, and other related international organizations. So for like other scientific papers, this chapter will start with the abstract, the introduction. For the third part, I would like to explain about the basic concepts. It covers the energy policy, sustainable development and adaptation to energy, sustainable development goals, focusing on energy-related ones, and sustainable energy development monitoring. In this case, I would like to explain about the indicators of sustainable energy development. The fourth one, and I think is the most important part of my chapter, is the literature review. And I divided a literature review into general overview, the impact of energy policy in achieving sustainable development goal, and then I focus on the case studies, different countries or regions with a different income level, like developing countries, developed countries, or least developed countries, and also countries with a different situation to find the best practice. And also the last one is identifying the influential factors in shaping the sustainable energy policy. And the chapter will end with proposing the appropriate sustainable energy policies. So for the, the expected conclusion from my understanding and the literature review, I know that designing an inclusive economic environment in a policy requires considering different aspects such as institutional quality, social demographic, economic sources, and availability. So from the result of this book chapter, we can find and design a good framework for every group of countries or panel of countries with the same situation. So that's all, and thank you so much for your consideration and patience. Any comments, concerns, and questions are welcome.
Yeah, very good time management again. So since you already saved time, we will probably just immediately follow up and question and comments. So probably it will be more efficient. Yeah. So Farhad and Dayong, as an editor, do you have any comments?
So let's go for the, let's have all presentations. I think it's better. Then let's have
all, right?
Okay. Yeah, at the end of the session. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Then we move to the next presentation from Dr. Sorry, I think I have a difficult to pronounce the name. If I pardon me if I didn't pronounce it correct. It's a Farhad, right? I have been to Laos a few times, but still have difficult to pronounce the names. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Manvisa. I'm a co-author of this chapter. So I want to I share my screen first. Then. Oh.
No progress yet.
Oh. Sorry. So Professor Farhad, could you please, I will send a PowerPoint to the group, and could you please share it on the screen? I think it's
okay.
Okay.
Is it clear now?
Is it?
Yeah, I can see. You probably just show. Okay, yeah, it's good.
No, I just send it to the chat.
This is
box.
Another version. This is the version that I received from.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's another version.
Okay, so let me just a moment. Is this correct?
Yes, thank you, Professor.
Okay.
Okay. Many thanks for having me at this workshop and allow me and my colleague to be a part of the handbook. I like to share with you a general idea of our chapter entitled Challenges in Shaping Sustainable Energy Policy in Greater Mekong Sub-region. And then looking forward to hear from you comments to further revision of this chapter. Our chapter is simple. It's a narrative writing that's prior change of energy policy in the GMS countries, and also focused on Laos as well, as this country located in the center area of the region connecting GMS countries via economic corridors. In the introduction part, it will cover the economic structural changes of each country in the GMS sub-region, then followed by the changes in energy structure. For example, Laos is the fast-growing economy in GMS. Its economy is quite small, but very fast growing in terms of GDP growth over the past decade. Being the fast growing economy, but showing a slow economy structural transformation from agricultural to industrial base. About the population growth, Laos has not experienced a baby boom as many countries after the war. A small number of population has made a few benefits from economic activities. For the next slide is energy intensity level in the GMS. Well, China has the highest energy consumption per capita among the GMS countries, followed by Thailand and Vietnam. The per capita electricity consumption of Laos increased from 725 kilowatt hours in 2017 to 910 kilowatt hours in 2019, remaining as one of the lowest in the GMS. However, the energy intensity of Lao economy was higher than Thailand and Vietnam in the 1990s and turning to the lowest in the 2000s. For next slide is electrification rate. There are drastically changes in electrification rate in the GMS countries. Laos has low electrification rate when comparing with China, Thailand, and Vietnam. A low density rate leads to scattered power projects all over the country. It is difficult to gain benefits from economy of scale by building hydropower dams. There are dynamic changes in energy policy over the past decades. So it is important to enhance the regional integration for improving energy security. For electricity trade in percent. Well, next slide is basically countries that have energy deficits are Cambodia, Thailand, and China. On the other hand, energy surplus countries include Laos, Myanmar, and Vietnam. In the case of Laos, for instance, electricity surplus occurs in rainy seasons and allow these countries to export mainly to Thailand, of course. In contrast, Laos has to import electricity when facing energy deficit in dry season because of we depend on the hydropower dams for electricity generation. So in the past, Thailand dominates Laos electricity of generation and consumption. For future direction, the electricity trade may be moved to other countries like Laos want to export to Vietnam, Cambodia, Singapore, Malaysia, and Myanmar. This will reduce the risk of power monopoly from one dominant country like Thailand over Laos. Next slide, please. Taking Laos as a case study for the Center of Energy Hub to supply electricity in rainy season and demand electricity in dry season. At the early stage of state buildings of Lao PDR in the 1970s and the 1980s, a policymaker took hydropower as the national agenda. It was because they assumed that Laos has strategic location with potential rivers to construct several dams, well, especially the Great Mekong River and its tributary. The administration did not have a sufficient expertise about geology, and it costed a massive amount of budget to explore the minerals during that period. So they took hydropower for energy generation. They aim high to build more dams for providing subsistent domestic consumption and mainly exporting to neighboring countries, turning the nation to become the regional energy supplier. Of course, not only we study historical changes in Laos, but we also extend this pattern to other GMS countries when we write the chapters. Slide observing about energy generation and consumption could be changed quickly and may affect to energy security and insecurity in the sub-region. For example, it is estimated Laos has a hydropower potential of about 26 gigawatts, and it adds for more 2 gigawatts of hydro capacity in 2019. It is the third highest generation globally after China and Brazil. Then Laos moved to a coal-fired power plant for electricity generation after discovering lignite in the mid-2000s. This strategy goes against the green growth and sustainable development agenda. Slide 8, we have strong concern about the use of the coal for energy consumption and generation. Of course, we will reveal the use of the non-renewable energy source in each country in the GCMS as well. For carbon emission in next slide, the figures help us to confirm the concern of, next slide, please, Professor Farhad. Thank you. This figure helps us to confirm the concern of carbon dioxide emission issue and the global climate change agenda. The GMS sub-region is also unavoidable. Thus, a circular policy and implementation, such as the poverty eradication strategy, the graduation from the least developed country, the green growth strategy, and the GMS sub-regional integration strategy make an unclear decision to determine energy policy. So in the conclusion, next slide is that we will continue to gather data from other countries, hoping to draw a policy implications for the GMS sub-region by stating country members' challenges in shaping energy policy, as it is the expected output of our chapter. Thank you very much.
Okay, okay, very good time management.
Thank
Perfect.
you, Dr. Rock.
So I will move to our last presenter for my session, and that's Professor Gopal, right? Yeah, it's a sustainable energy policy for India.
Yes, very good morning to all of you. Very good afternoon to some of you. I hope that I'm audible. Is the presentation visible?
Yeah.
Okay, so what to do is that in quick 5-7 minutes, I'll present this idea, a very brief idea. This paper, as you see, the title of the paper is, just let me make it full screen. Yes. So the title of the paper is Energy Policy Making in India, a Complex Case of Synergistic Divergence. This particular term is usually used in medical science. I have tried to use it in this context to bring out the fact that the dichotomies that exist in the Indian energy policy making. The paper is being jointly developed by myself and Dr. Farhad. Farhad and myself have been Dr. Farhad and myself have been working on several papers together. So, and this is also kind of joint development. If you look at, I mean, this paper is trying to first bring out the question of transition. In fact, the profound energy transition which is happening in India in various ways. So I would be, we would be basically be bringing 3 dimensions of transition. One is the structural dimension, the other one is technological dimension, third one is the market and regulated related dimension. Structural dimension in terms of the change in the mix, energy mix in the country, which is dramatically being changed for in the last decade. Technological dimensions in terms of there has been a lot of recent developments, particularly with reference to the sectoral integration, e-vehicles, transport sector, energy sector being integrated. Emergence of new storage technologies, pumped hydro storage and all that, hydrogen technology, blue economy. So there's a lot of focus now to extract energy, to get energy from the ocean. Okay, one of my recent papers is around that. So this is second dimension of transition. Third one is basically the transition, which is spurred primarily by the market. Okay, there has been new market forms, auctions, particularly for solar and wind, and new business models, particularly for rooftop solar. And of course, there are also emergence of power exchanges. So ideally, the third point should have been the power exchanges. So these are essentially the mechanisms through which the transition is actually being operationalized in Indian context and giving way to new forms of new kind of energy system in the country. Then there are a lot of debates and dichotomies. This particular section will be focusing on the emerging debates, the debates in terms of the global commitments by the government of India and then local compulsions, domestic compulsions. So global commitment, how the India is, there is a lot of expectations from the global, agencies that India should commit to net zero and all that. What are the global commitments and what kind of domestic compulsions are there, which are driving these transitions and creating some kind of conflict overall. Debates around climate change and economic development, which is recently being resurfaced, particularly in the context of this transition, moving away from coal economy towards a green economy, black economy towards a green economy, and what kind of developmental challenges these are going to bring back, because substantial amount of people are employed in the coal sector. And if we do not really create alternatives, and we're only talking about environment, only talking about climate change, probably you are actually not doing justice. So I'll bring that in this, we'll bring that in the next section. Then there is this transitions in larger context of political settings. India is a federal country, and energy constitutionally, Indian constitution recognizes this as kind of concurrent item, meaning that both the provincial entities and the federal entities are equally empowered. So there are competitive arrangements, collaborative arrangements, which actually kind of contributes to this transition. Some provincial governments are not happy with what is happening at the national level. Some of them are happy. So these kind of debates are going on. Then there are a lot of debates around small versus large scale interventions, decentralized versus centralized projects, particularly solar projects, wind projects. And that is why the decentralization has not been given priority as of now. That is why the rooftop solar has not been picked up. Private versus public. Public is actually, while public is dominant, government is dominant in fossil fuel and private is dominant in renewables. That kind of creates some kind of a dichotomy. So this is the kind of, this section will be primarily looking at that. And our third section, which would be basically focusing on the sustainability of this and basically drawing from the second section, but building more on that. So debates, as I said, debates around environment and development will be more clearly dealt in this section, looking at issues of just transition, because your eastern belt is rich in coal, western and southern belt is rich in renewables. You're moving away from this. So what kind of sustainability we are actually trying to look at, whether there is a fine balance between this, whether you can have a middle ground to find out what could be the best way to, whereas your climate goals are met, at the same time, you also not losing out on employment, not losing out on environmental dimensions, not losing out creating local economies and all that. Social dimensions, livelihood is emerging issue now in Indian context, because as I said, coal economy is the largest informal employer in the country. And if you're moving away from coal, so what kind of other alternative livelihoods are creating? Small versus large scale players. Large scale players are actually eating up the small scale. There has been a lot of mergers happen in last decades. So which is actually kind of not creating space for small. So it's a kind of social issue. If you're not allowing, you're not creating a regulation, is not creating effective facilitative platform for the small scale players, it is going to be very problematic in long run. Then economic dimensions, we are looking at costs, but what about quality? What about quality of the solar power plants being deployed? Everybody is trying to look at, okay, at what cost? What is the new cost being discovered? 2 Indian rupees for every kilowatt hour of electricity being produced. But what about quality? How long this plants will sustain? All these should be dealt in this particular section. Then I believe that all these 3 and 4 critical sections which should be dealt will definitely lead to very solid and very profound policy implications. Understanding the debate itself is something which is kind of enrich the policy debate, because policymakers do not really know what is happening on these dimensions. Some of them are focusing on environment, some of them are focusing on livelihoods. So what is the fine balance? That is something which is more important when you look at the expected policy outcomes, and kind of sensitizing policymakers that look, here is a debate which is actually not been given attention. Then context specificities. So as I said, India is a vast country just like China, so you have context-specific problems. So whether the policies, regulations, guidelines, rules that are being made at the central level or at the local level are kind of accommodating these policy context specificities. And then finding a middle ground, which will basically be telling you, okay, look, while you are looking at environment, looking at climate change, you also at the same time have to look at what would be the best way out, instead of taking a blind view, either environment or development. You'll have to find a middle ground. So this is in very nutshell what the paper is trying to bring in, drawing from the Indian energy policy making and energy policy implementation. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. Thanks to Dr. Farhad and Dr. Dayong and Professor Rock for organizing this interesting session. Wonderful, I enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for keeping again the time. Excellent. I noticed probably most of the members are university lecturers, so it's a very good time people. So I think now we open to the questions and comments.
Yeah, thank you very much. Let me start. Dayong, are you here? Okay,
yeah,
so let me start. So I have a comment. So all chapters are interesting. Thanks to all presenters. So I have some comments on the laws chapter. So Vanvisa and Dr. Pampaki, thank you for contributing to the handbook. So the chapter is interesting and it would be interesting. And just please focus more on GMS rather than laws alone. So it's okay to consider and study the case of laws, but in GMS. So I found out that your presentation is more on laws. So please make it more on GMS. So this is one thing. And talking about the challenges and policies for sustainable energy in GMS. So that would be very interesting for the readers of this handbook. And another thing, another thing that I understood, that presentation was not so much challenging. So it was more look like a report by a government agency or by, for example, consulting. So it means showing figures, this is the progress. But since this is a academic work, it needs to be questioned and it needs to be challenging. This is the current situation, but how to improve it? How to improve it? What are the policies to improve the current situation? And this is the second point. And by considering the academic style of writing, so it means literature review shouldn't be neglected, and also research question, contribution to the literature, and so on. So these are the comments on the laws chapter. So Dayong, do you have comment on other chapters or on this chapter?
Yes, right. Thank you very much. I think, yes, we do have a very interesting collection in this section. I did not comment on Liu Chang's paper because I will talk to her in person later about subsidies. Very important. A number of things that I will discuss in person with her. I think for the second paper, or Dr. Oyani's your paper, I think it's interesting. I like to see this kind of literature based, but I think the topic is quite big. I mean, for SDGs, right? So in general, we're looking for a big topic to cover. I think the point I want to say is that if you want to have a particular focus on certain things instead of too general on a broad categories of SDGs, maybe focus more on energy or energy related issues. That's probably better. I think that's what I hope to say from you. Manisa's work, I think I have a similar concern, like Farhad says. We do want to say more about GMS. I think regional energy market policies matters quite a lot than a single country. So the general idea is that the energy policy, we might use a particular country like Laos as a example to or case to start with, but it has to be generalizable. So it has to be able to generalize to connected regions or other general issues about sustainable energy policy in an area. I think I also want to say a few words about the last one, Dr. Sarangi. I think India is also a very important case, and that's as the biggest one of the biggest players in this world. I think India's energy policy or sustainable energy policy is critical. But I think one of the trouble I've got over looking over these presentations, this talk about on sustainable development policies, is what kind of sustainable energy policy we're looking at. How do we define what kind of sustainable is really sustainable? Trying to I mean, this is the issue I've recently working on, or recently been thinking about. This energy transition towards green or clean energy sector, or coping with climate change. But that's a long-term goal, a long-term sustainability. And also we need to consider the policies that guarantee short-term sustainability. So in the sense that we don't want to see a short-term energy shortage, for example, like the energy crisis happening around the world recently. So if we could address this issue in the context of India, and maybe you can think about it in more general, and that could be a better option to go forward. I think that's all I want to say, but thank you very much. I think I'm looking forward to seeing your work. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, any further questions? If no, probably we can invite the presenter for a quick response. Seems no more questions. So for presenters, do you have any quick response, any of you?
Can I quickly respond to what Professor Dayong has? I think it's a very valid point made by Professor Dayong. Yes, the idea basically is to bring out the long-term sustainability. I understand the point that you made, even the crisis which is currently going on, the coal shortages in India and China, gas shortages in Europe and all that. I think that, yes, you're absolutely right. So it basically to make it, to ensure that the relevance of this chapter remains, will definitely bring out the long-term sustainability and what could be the middle ground. What could be the middle ground, looking not only at the recent crisis, also looking at what is happening in last decade, and what is the learning from this and how it can be taken forward, maybe at least from mid-time to long run kind of thing, till 2030 or 2050. So that kind of an aspirational thing would be definitely integrated in the chapter. Thank you so much again for your comments.
For the other presenter seems, yeah.
Rocky, can I just add one more thing in general, because I think if I look at correctly, I think we have 3 papers talking about sustainable energy policy, although it's targeting different regions or countries, but I'm still trying to say, if we can have some kind of differentiation, means that we don't want 3 chapters talking about the same thing, but only apply to different countries. I think the point is that if we could have some unique features on each of the papers, each of the chapters, that will make this section more interesting. I think that's what we But yes, we'll look at this one as when we see your work, and we're probably going to get better idea what to highlight, any special features on sustainable. So because we don't want to have 3 sustainable energy policy chapters, but only marginal differences within the chapter. So we want to make sure that these 3 chapters are, each one of them has have its own special feature in the end. But that's what we're looking for in the future, right? So when we see the work. All right, thank you.
Okay, if no comments, response, we will conclude the session. Seems there isn't any comment response. So then I will conclude the section 4, and I will hand over back the stage to Farhad. So Farhad, the stage is yours again.
Thank you very much, Rock, for chairing this session, and thanks to the presenters and for presenting their chapter. So we finished this chapter and this section, and we are going to have a break. So it means 14 minutes. 14 minutes. It's supposed to be 10 minutes, but we can have 14 minutes. So let's come back within 14 minutes, and then we will have the final section of this webinar. See you. Hello again. Thank you very much for coming back. Let's start the last session of today and this workshop. The session is on energy transition, energy efficiency, and electricity market policy that will be chaired by Dr. Yu Qin Xian of Southwestern University of Finance and Economics. Dr. Yu, please.
Okay, thanks, Farhad. Hi, everyone. I'm Jingxian Yu. I'm from Southwestern University of Finance and Economics, and I actually work with Dayong. So today he just asked me to host this last section, and I believe that we will have a great presentation for this section and have a wonderful ending of this. So I think I would just start for the first one, presentation 18. So is the printer here?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, great. So you can go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me just share my presentation slides.
Okay.
Okay, so hopefully you guys can see. Yeah, so thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to contribute in the book and at the same time share the initial research in the seminar. So dear chair, professors and editors, thanks a lot. Personally, I follow Dr. Farhad and his research. He's been a great inspiration for me personally. And at the same time, I believe this particular book is very timely and it will have a wide range of readers. So congratulations on that as well. So let's come to our book chapter, our proposed book chapter, as I may say. It is all about artificial intelligence in the nuclear power plants and who is liable when AI fails to perform. So the title itself is indicating that we will be discussing about the legal aspects of nuclear energy liability, particularly in the application of artificial intelligence. So let me just start with narrations. When we talk about energy transition, sustainability, most of the researchers in today's world tends to speak about renewable energy, solar energy, hydro, so on, right? We almost forgot the contribution of nuclear energy as a clean energy production. Now, you may ask me why the trend has been changed as such. Although the nuclear energy technology been with us for 100 years, it have been tested, it have been developed in a way that it is 99% safe. Still, we can't actually talk about it in that bigger way. So I will give you some of the reasons why still there is a negative perception towards nuclear energy for a sustainable energy solution. The first one is public negative perceptions. Although there's been just 3 major accidents or meltdowns of nuclear energy, one is 3 Mile Island, one is Chernobyl, and another one is Fukushima, still people believe that nuclear power plants are not safe. So the scientists have proved that it's not the case. The possibilities or probabilities of having an accident in case of nuclear power plant, it's very low, lower than any other energy power plants. Although I will not go into that discussion, my particular concern is, what if we can change this whole scenario? What if nuclear power plants do not melt down anymore? Or what if there is 0.0000 chance that nuclear energy never will melt down? Okay, I will come into it. And the second reason why nuclear energy has not been in the talks for a long time is that the problem associated with nuclear waste management. So nuclear fuel is radioactive, and it has a long-term effect on the environment. And that's why environmental experts do not support the usage of nuclear energy as a mean to sustainable or clean energy. Okay, then just let's begin with the discussion of the main chapter. Before that, let me introduce once again, I'm Ridwan Karim, working as a lecturer at Monash University, and my co-author is Firdaus Mohammad Suki, working as a lecturer in Edinburgh Napier University, UK. Okay, so how we can ensure that nuclear power plants will not melt down? Okay, first of all, it's not 100% achievable. We all know that. So there are certain applications of AI that can ensure the maximum safety and security to the power plant. So AI can be used for the operation of nuclear power plant, which will reduce the chances of meltdowns or human errors. It can help to fuel management. That means the nuclear waste will be lesser because of the efficient fuel management. It can diagnose the fault within the power plant and identify the transients process. It can also make a huge difference in case of accident scenarios. And there are other, interesting applications as well, which I'll be talking about right now. So these are the possible solutions that AI can play today. And it's been playing actually. If I'm saying that it will play, that would be a wrong message to send. AI has been implemented in several nuclear power plants all over the world, and the engineers, the scientists are, feeling that this is the future for nuclear power plants, AI or artificial intelligence. It's not been using only for the nuclear power plants, also for the solar panels, renewable energies, such as hydros. Even in the case of the fossil fuel power plants nowadays, they're trying to implement artificial intelligence. So obviously, artificial intelligence is going to be the future for energy industry, as long as the automobiles and other energy industries as well. We have certainly seen the growth of Tesla. Now it's time to take that AI methods and process to other industries as well. Now, this is all about, I'm talking relating to nuclear fission. That means that the AI usage in operations, AI usage in fuel management, all happens in a process of nuclear fission. So today's nuclear power plants are basically use the physical, the law of physics of nuclear fission. So there are another option for us, which is nuclear fusion, which have not been practically implemented yet. What's the major difference between nuclear fission and fusion? The major difference is that in case of nuclear fission, there is a chances of meltdowns and radioactivity that we have seen in Chernobyl, in 3 Mile Island, and recently in Fukushima. But what would happen if we implement nuclear fusion? There is also meltdown opportunities, but the radioactivity will be zero. No radioactivity. The damages would go only to the power plant itself and the technologies surrounding that power plant through nuclear fusion. China and another company, TEA in America, is already in the verge of that innovation. That means nuclear fusion is almost there. I'm not saying that they're scientifically still, success, that achieve the success, but they are already in the verge of the success. So if nuclear fusion can be implemented for the future, then it will actually eliminate all the negative concerns relating to safety and radioactivity among the general people and also for the scientists. So coming back to nuclear fusion. So why we need nuclear fusion? We are very straightforward, understand that we need nuclear fusion for the future so that the nuclear power plants are 100% safe. But how to create energy from nuclear fusion? This is where AI comes to play. Thousands of data needed to be analyzed in a single or mini single seconds in case of nuclear fusion. And AI is doing the right thing at the right time. This is the time where scientists believe within next 5 years, they will be achieve nuclear fusion. China has already done so. So there's a huge possibility that they will be going to the mass production of energy through nuclear fusion. Now, nuclear fission and fusion, in both cases, AI is the future. That is what we will be analyzing in our literature reviews, and we'll be trying to understand how it can create a transition to the energy industry within next 5 to 10 years. Now, the thing is that completely safe?
Only 1 minute.
Oh, sorry. Is that completely safe? Now, the question is that completely safe? Okay, perhaps it is, but there can be issues of safety as well. So that is where, if nuclear AI fails in nuclear power plants, who would take the liability? It may cause, if it using fission technology, it may cause yet the radioactivity and can damage a whole lot of environment and economic leave economic consequences. So we'll be liable at that. So we'll be actually reviewing the international nuclear liability laws and regulations, and at the same time, national nuclear laws and liabilities of the countries who are producing nuclear energy. It is matter of fact that if the meltdown happens due to AI, current nuclear liability laws will not be enough to comprehend the challenge. We have tort laws that have been used in the English common law countries. We have 2 conventions. One is Paris Convention and another is Vienna Convention, which imposes civil liability, but there is no liability for the producer, and there is very limited liability for the operator. So the liability regime is not comprehensive at all if we use AI in the nuclear energy power plants. And if a meltdown happens in the future, same goes to nuclear fusion as well. This is not only happening in nuclear power plants. AI is vulnerable in case of liability loss, not only in energy power plants, but also in other industries. We have seen certain accidents of Tesla. We couldn't make Tesla liable for that. Why? Because we don't have liability laws. So it's the right time for the policymakers to think about liability laws before implementing this particular technology in the process. The scientists are almost there. We need to catch up with them, okay? Otherwise, we would be leaving far behind, or we would not get the ultimate fruitful results from the technology that we are supposed to do. And believe me or not, in a lot of cases, nuclear energy still is very economically competitive.
For 10 seconds.
Okay, yeah, it is still very competitive in comparison with renewable energy in the long run. So I would suggest our chapter would suggest some of the policy recommendations that would help the policymakers to think, to revisit and changes their liability laws, or at least the international nuclear liability laws. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your sharing. So I think we'll have the discussion in the end of the presentations. So now we'll welcome the 19th presentations Diane or
Yes.
okay?
Yeah.
Great. You can start.
Thank you for the opportunity. Let me share my screen, my presentation.
Okay.
Can you see?
Not yet. Okay, great. Now we can see it.
Okay, one moment. Yeah. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity, and it's been an honor to be part of this handbook publication. I am Dian, Research Associate of Energy Research Affairs, Economic Research Institute for Asia and East Asia, and also co-author for this chapter titled Towards an Optimized Biofuels Use Roadmap for Indonesian Road Transport. So to shorten the time, let me begin with the background study. So biofuel has been considered as an option to partially substitute the fossil fuel-based petroleum fuel in the existing vehicles and engines technology, because at a certain level, it doesn't need any requirement major technological change. In this chapter, we will focus more on Indonesian biofuel development, because Indonesia has abundant feedstocks that has not been fully utilized for biofuel. Also, the government of Indonesia considered significant roles of biofuel, especially in road transport, to reduce fuel import, greenhouse gases emission, and to boost biofuel industry. Current biofuel policy mandate to blend 30% of biodiesel in diesel fuel for road transport has made Indonesia as the most advanced country in the world in terms of biodiesel used. The government is seriously targeting the biofuel blending mandates, while at the same time to improve the environmental performance of its road transport sector by moving up the standard from Euro 2 to Euro 4 standard. Also, realizing the biofuel is important to improve air quality, because biofuel has low sulfur content, which good for the environment. Then this graph shows that in terms of mandatory blending rate of biofuels for road transport, both for biodiesel and bioethanol, the policy have been established since 2008. However, biodiesel has caught up the target better than bioethanol. Why? Because the price of molasses as a bioethanol feedstock is still significantly high compared to the conventional gasoline. And then, so that the objective of this study is to find the possible blend levels, including its impacts and policy frameworks for biofuel development. First, we are going to identify the feasible level of advancement of different levels of biofuel blend in Indonesia, based on not only the different economic and energy market situations, but also in the environmental requirements. And the second, to develop a guideline framework for policy recommendation to optimize the penetration level of biofuels towards 2040 agenda. And then regarding the feedstock and conversion technology for biofuels, so Indonesia is actually on its way to develop and commercialize biofuels, identifying from its feedstocks and conversion technologies. So Indonesia is currently feasible to commercialize biofuel products from conventional feedstocks, which are CPO-based biodiesel productions and sugarcane-based bioethanol production with conventional technology. Recent updates also announced that Pertamina, a state-owned oil and gas company of Indonesia, succeed to produce green diesel and upcoming green gasoline for bioafter, and then it's still, however, it's still under the demonstration stage and before going to public. Also, in this chapter book, we will discuss the detail of the different conventional feedstocks and conventional conversion technology and non-conventional technology. The general concept of the chapters will be based on literature review of all elements that provide principles in elaborating a biofuel roadmap for Indonesia road transport sectors. And also it based on the previous area studies on biofuels. It will cover a review of the state of the arts of biofuel development in the world. And then it will look into the success stories and implementation from the several front-runner countries, such as Brazil, United States, European Union, and Thailand. Next, a review of the development of biofuels as road transport fuel in Indonesia, cover the objectives, historical of biofuel policies, capacity, and future potentials and challenges. And then lastly, the review of future scenario assessment based on biofuel as mandates and biofuel as a fuel station, fuel options, sorry. So the biofuel as mandates will cover the government's targets on blended fuels such as B30, B40, or D100 or green diesel. And the biofuel as a fuel option will cover the policy options which are based on the market-based study on biofuels preference for road transport. So, and then here's the research structure for this chapter. It will begin with the introduction, cover the background and historical perspective, definition and scope of biofuels, methodology to elaborate a roadmap, and then the organization of paper sections. And then we will review the international experiences of biofuel development, as I mentioned before. And next, it's a state of the art of biofuel development in Indonesia, including the objectives of biofuel development in road transport sector, existing production pathways and current biofuel conditions in Indonesia, and fuel quality improvements and Euro standard that will be implemented in Indonesia. Then next, the impact assessment of future biofuel scenarios. It will look into two scenarios. First, the principal biofuel scenario, which will base on the policy mandates of fuel blending scenario from the Ministries of Industries in Indonesia. And then the second is the optional biofuel scenario, which will be based on the area study on market-based biofuel policy options. And next is a policy implication, which cover the principle of biofuel roadmap for Indonesia. And it will be closed with the conclusion and references. This will be my last slide. So the biofuel roadmap will have a policy, expected policy implications. So first, that the economic conditions of the country, energy outlook, and energy prices will be the main consideration for biofuels development in road transport, including price competitiveness compared to the conventional fuels. Also, its implication to consider the importance of cost effectiveness and financing strategy, which include the subsidy strategies for biofuels, and then the tax scheme for biofuel as a mandate policy, or leave the biofuel option to the free market. And the next, the need for a multidisciplinary approach. So it is important to look at the multi-sectoral and multi-ministries especially from agriculture and industry sector, which are closely related to the biofuel development. And lastly, it's important to assess the policy measure for for the biofuel for road transport, because the policy measures is arbitrary and exogenous. So we need to be careful, assess the impacts of the policy in the policy. Yes. So yes, I think that's all for the chapter proposal for this, and I'm open for a comment and suggestion from the chairs. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Diane. So I think we'll move your discussion to the end of the presentations. Better, okay? And presentation 20, the next one is not coming, so we're going direct to the presentation 21, and it's me to do the presentation. So let me share my screen with you first. So now, can you see the screen?
Yes, it is clear.
Yes. Okay, great. So I will start my presentation today. Actually, we changed the title a little bit from the original one to this one, because I think we would like to introduce the reform of China's electricity market and trying to analyze the efficiency issue of the thermal power plants. And this will be made by my co-author and two of my students. Okay, so here is a little bit background. Since we know that in 2020, China launched the 30-60 goals. That is, they're trying to pick the emissions by 2030 and to reach the carbon neutral in 2060. But we know that it is quite an ambitious plan for China, since now China is still one of the world's largest emitters. So in order to reduce the carbon emissions, China actually has started to transit the energy from fossil fuel to the renewable energies in early 20th centuries. And recently, China has also started to operate a nationwide emissions trade system. And we know that electricity sector actually plays a really crucial role in this system. So can see here that the role of electricity sector, since it accounts for over 40% of the total emissions in China, and the coal power remains 60%. So if we like to transit to the low carbon society, it is quite crucial for the electricity sector. So in our studies, we're trying to introduce the electricity sector reform in China, because it's really good experience for China and for other countries to learn something. So actually it has, the China would like to encourage the infrastructure expansion and improve efficiency in electricity sector. So the electricity market has gradually transformed from the former central planning system to a more market-oriented system. But actually still now, the market is still controlled by the government. But we can see, actually it has 4 stages for the electricity market. And for the first stage, the main reform is the deregulation on investment and pricing. Since in 1985, the State Council issued several policy documents which encourage to build more power plants to increase the electricity generation at that time, and new electricity price mechanism also carried out. And the investment from the local governments, the non-government entitled and formal companies have then been allowed to involve in the electricity sector. And those plans found by the above organizations called common financing generation plans. And those plans are increased rapidly during the 1990s. And at the end of the 1990s, the portion of installed capacity controlled by the central government was reduced to only around 50%. And then in this stage 2, the main reform is marketization, which is going to separate the government and enterprises, because there were 2 things marked in 1990s for the electricity market. One is the large decrease of the electricity demand caused by the Southeast Asian financial crisis. And the other is the reform of electric management system. So in 1997, the State Council decided to dismantle the Ministry of Electricity Power, and the administrative and guide functions were transferred to the State Economics and Trade Committee. So a new organization called State Power Corporation was built to take over the generation plants, transmission, and distribution parts of the former Ministry of Electricity Power. And then it goes to the third stage from 2002 to 2014. And the main reform is the separation of generation and grid. They just separate it into 2 grids, 5 generation and 4 supporting corporations. And also has the pricing reform to set up the benchmark wholesale prices and the catalog of retail tariffs. And then it's the last stage from 2015. And the main reform is the deeper marketization, going to partial the price liberalization and to integrate the new renewable energy. So to sum up, actually after 1984 in China, the shortage of the system led to several problems and motivated the reform of electricity market. So we see there's several stages for the market trying to transform from the central controlled system to the market-oriented system. So here is the some achievements of this kind of reform. You can see it shows that the both installed capacity and the total production of the electricity sector has sharply increased from stage 1 to stage 4. But here you can see that for the operation hours of the electricity sector actually start to decrease since the stage 3. And interestingly, you can see the efficiency, the line. It is the efficiency of the coal power or thermal power plants. You can see it is decreased very significantly since the stage 1 to stage 4. And here you also can see that even though the China want to peak the emissions at 2030 and to have the carbon neutral 2060, but the coal power plants, the power production of the thermal power plants still the main growth of these of the energy structures. So there are some challenges and objectives for the future reform of the China's electricity market. You can see it has these trigger carbon targets, and the energy security is also one of the main challenges. And of course, you can see there's some problem of the efficient productivity. And here is some objective for the next stage of electricity sector reform. The first is the deeper marketization reform to improve the efficiency and have the further integration of renewable energy. And also it might have to alleviate the resource misallocation and to improve the productivity. So in our chapter, we are trying to introduce these reform policies of China's electricity market. And we are in the background, we are trying to explore the efficiency issue of thermal power plants over time and trying to empirically quantify the effect of market reform on efficiency. And then we will use the data from the China Industrial Survey by the National Bureau of Statistics in China and the China's Electricity Council. So I think that's all for my presentation today. And thanks for myself. And then we're going to the presentation. I will just stop to share the screen of mine. So I think we'll have the next presentation. It's a printer here. 22 energy for climate action. Hello, So who going to talk? Hello.
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. Is my screen visible?
Hi.
Yes, it's clear.
Can start.
Yeah. So firstly, I would like to thank the editorial team at the Tokai University, Dr. Farhad, Mr. Dayong, and others for giving us this opportunity to present our chapter in the Handbook of Energy Policy. So my presentation title is Energy Efficiency for Climate Action, Evolution of India's EE Policies and Way Forward. So I am presenting this along with my other colleagues who are Mr. Deepak Tiwari and Dr. Bhaskar Natarajan. Sorry. I think my screen is visible now, right? Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, it is visible.
Yeah. I will just check whether it is moving or not because I think there is some issue. Yeah, fine. So these are the contents of my slide: background, research, objectives, methodology, resources, chapter structure, and the policy implications. So first, I would like to start with the background. So in India, the energy efficiency noise was created during the 1950s with the establishment of the National Productivity Council in 1958 and the setting up of the Fuel Policy Committee in 1970. Because of the Industrial Revolution and the huge surge in the fuel demand from the transport sector. Then in 1973, due to the global oil crisis and the Yom Kippur War, the government started realizing the seriousness of energy efficiency even more, and which led to the formation of the Petroleum Conservation Research Association in 1978, as well as the enactment of the Energy Conservation Act in 2001. Now, this enactment of the EC Act was one of the most transformative reforms in the history of energy efficiency in India because it resulted in the setting up of the Bureau of Energy Efficiency in India, which is under the Ministry of Power, and it has the responsibility to implement the objectives of the EC Act and to help in the formulation of policies across all the demand sectors to increase the energy efficiency of the Indian economy. Now, and moving ahead in 2010, the Government of India formally launched the National Action Plan on Climate Change. So it had total 8 missions, and one of the missions was the National Mission on Enhanced Energy Efficiency. So the responsibility of implementing the National Mission on Enhanced Energy Efficiency was also on the shoulders of BEE, or the Bureau of Energy Efficiency in India. So this was all about the history of the energy efficiency. Now coming to the research gap. Now, as we know, like BEE has the responsibility for implementing the EC Act and to promote energy efficiency and energy conservation activities. And as a result of that, it has formulated several policies in the demand sectors like industry, buildings, discoms, agriculture, municipality, with support from various bilateral and multilateral organizations. And BEE also coordinates with various state designated agencies in India for implementing the energy efficiency activities across the Indian states. And as we have discussed, it also holds the responsibility of the NMEEE mission under the National Action Plan on Climate Change. However, what we have seen is like all the bureau was set up, but we need to really evaluate the impact of the various measures and initiatives which were taken by BEE. And there are several studies, but they are like fragmented. The impact of the energy efficiency journey in India is actually fragmented, and hence there is a need for a compilation and a comprehensive assessment of all these measures post the enactment of EC Act, and we need to really see like where are we in achieving the objectives as defined under the EC Act, as well as where are we in case of the targets which are set up in the established in the under the NDC. So this was the gap as due to which we felt the need to write this paper and to do this comprehensive study. So the objectives of the research is to map all the policies post the EC Act, mostly formulated by BEE across the demand sectors. Then we also need to map all the impact assessment studies done by several organizations like BEE and other think tanks in India like CWC, STEP, KD, AEEE, and others. Now we need to evaluate. We have decided to evaluate the impact of these policies based on 3 criteria. One is obviously the energy and emission savings. Second is the monetary savings, and third is the success factors and the success factors in this policy, as well as the challenges which resulted in the low success of some of these policies. So once we come to know about these things, we will be in a position to identify the shortcomings of the existing and past measures, which will really help us to provide some strong recommendations for strengthening the existing efforts under energy efficiency in India. Now the methodology is reviewing of all the government reports and the secondary literature for energy efficiency policies as well as their impact, and then doing a qualitative and quantitative analysis for the evaluation of these policies. So the resources we have identified, this is an indicative list, and a lot of resources may be added in this list in future. So for the annual reports by Bureau of Energy Efficiency and Ministry of Power, then the impact of energy efficiency measures, a study done by BEE in 1920. Then India's energy efficiency landscape, which was a study done by AEEE, which actually compiled all the initiatives by various government and private sector under energy efficiency. And then there are several other studies focused on the analysis of the PAT sector, which was focused on the analysis of the PAT scheme, which was there for the industry sector, and also the impact study done by UNIDO for evaluation of the past programs in the MSME sector. And then we also have one flagship scheme called the Standards and Labeling Program. So the impact of this scheme was also measured by class. So this will also be referred. So these are some of the tentative resources which we are planning to refer. And the chapter structure which we have framed as of now is introduction, literature review. Then we will go into some of the details of the Energy Conservation Act. Then we will focus on the policy scenario post EC Act across all the demand sectors as mentioned on the screen. And then we will, and then there will be a section for the analysis and impact of these policies, and finally a section on the conclusion. Now, coming to the expected policy implications. So we will be evaluating majorly the policies which we will be evaluating the following policies for the large industries, MSMEs, buildings, discoms, then the market transformation measures, as well as the energy efficiency financing policies. Some of the flagship programs are displayed on the screen, like the PAT scheme, the SNL scheme, the ECBC, then Bachat Lamp Yojana, then the Partial Risk Guarantee Fund. So we will be evaluating majorly these schemes, and a few will be added to the list. Then based on the evaluation, there will be an identification of the barriers and the success factors, which will help in providing recommendations for strengthening the existing policy efforts. So that's it from my side. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thanks, Sharani. And so now we're going to the next presentation. So identifying and prioritizing the indicators of the optimal distribution in electricity distribution companies. So maybe it's Payam or Arash? Rash, okay.
Hello, everyone.
You can share your screen.
Let me just share my screen.
Okay.
Okay, could you confirm if you see my screen or not?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, thank you. Welcome to the 23rd presentation for Handbook of Energy Policy. I would first of all, I would like to express my sincere appreciation to the dear editors of this handbook, Dr. Taghizadeh-Hesary and Dr. Zhang, and of course the chair of this section, Dr. Yu. As you can see, this chapter is about identifying and prioritizing the indicators of the optimal districting in electricity distribution companies. This chapter will be authored by my co-author, my colleague, Dr. Payam Shojai, Associate Professor of Department of Management at Shiraz University, and myself, his current research assistant. This presentation is structured as follows. First, the background of the chapter is discussed. Then the presentation is continued by objectives, research process, and the case study of this chapter. Finally, the outcomes and the contribution of this chapter will be discussed. Okay, let's start with the background of the chapter. Amongst various organizations, electricity distribution companies play a crucial role in all the countries worldwide because they supply electricity to households and industrial electricity consumers. Since the modern economy is extremely dependent on reliable electricity, service quality is a significant characteristic of electricity distribution. And also one of the most significant components of literature in management. The importance of service quality is due to its strong influence on market share, market orientation, customer satisfaction, customer loyalty, and overall profitability and performance. Despite the economic and social importance of EDCs, investigating the various aspects of quality in these companies is limited to few studies, unfortunately. So there is an identified literature gap here. On the other hand, we face the problem of demand overload, which highly affects the quality of service providers in various organizations. Particularly in developing countries, demand overload is caused by numerous factors, such as growth rate of population in the metropolitan areas. As urban areas grow out of proportion, basic public infrastructures like health services, water sanitation, and other supporting services like EDCs are not able to keep up, which cause demand overload. Demand overload puts heavy financial, intellectual, and technical burdens on service providers, such as EDCs. This problem, considered as a vital issue in service planning, and prominently influences the service quality. Although addressing the consequences of demand overload requires more strategic planning, but EDCs can still take some innovative measures to deal with this demand overload issue and avoid deterioration of service quality. One of the useful initiatives is optimized districting. Districting is defined as grouping small geographic areas into larger geographic clusters so that these clusters are considered balanced. Accordingly, the objective of this chapter is to provide a framework for indicators of optimized districting in EDCs. This framework is consisted of identification and analysis. In order to analyze them. The analysis is conducted in order to find the interrelationships amongst the indicators, the type of each indicator, whether they are cause or effect, and finally the importance of each indicator. As you can see, the entire research process for this chapter is based on the expert's opinion. First, the experts were asked to identify related criteria in the related indicators. Then, identified indicators will be screened to find the most important ones using content validity ratio analysis. Afterward, to find the final indicators were analyzed using soft operations research techniques. To do so, the interrelationships amongst the indicators and each indicator type will be determined by using interpretive structural modeling and mixed-match analysis. Next, and finally, the output of the two mentioned techniques was used as the input for the integrated techniques of best force method and analytical network analysis in order to determine the relative weights or the importance of each indicator. Then we have to talk about the case study in this chapter. Is the Shiraz Electricity Distribution Company is a subset of the Iranian electricity distribution companies, which established in 1992. The Iranian electricity distribution companies, they act under the supervision of Taghizadeh Company. Taghizadeh Company is itself is Iran Power Generation, Transmission and Distribution Management Company, which is responsible for electricity generation, transmission and distribution in Iran and acts under the supervision of Ministry of Energy. The Iranian electricity distribution companies have representatives in each city of Iran responsible to maintenance of electricity and distribution, of course, distributing the electricity in that specific city. Currently, Shiraz, of course, for some services, subscribers have to visit the EDC in person. On the other hand, in the case of technical problems such as blackouts, EDC technicians may have to dispatch to different areas as operations teams if needed. Thus, for the convenience of all the stakeholders, Shiraz EDC have currently divided this city into 8 districts. 7 districts in Shiraz plus another one named Sadra district, as illustrated in the figure shown. Due to unsuitable districting, many problems are currently imposed on the company. Thus, an optimized redistricting seems necessary. Therefore, the company considered rethinking the districting of this city. Similar to EDCs in other cities, Shiraz EDC consists of 4 main departments. These departments are complaints investigation and legal, public relations, security and confidential affairs, and board of directors. Of course, each of these mentioned departments have their respective deputies and officers. However, administrative departments that have a vital role in identifying the pertinent indicators are Deputy of Operations and Dispatching, Deputy of Sales and Customer Services, and Deputy of Planning and Engineering.
Have 1 more minute.
Of course. In accordance with the objective of this chapter, the outcomes are, as we discussed, identifying, determining, the interrelationships, determine the type of each indicator, and determining the importance of each indicator. The contribution of this chapter is twofold. First, it decreases the gap in the literature of EDCs, provide empirical findings that can help EDCs in Iran and of course in other countries. This chapter covers two possible energy policies, including energy efficiency policies and programs and electricity market policy. Thank you for your attention and your time.
Thanks, Arash. So then we will come the last presentation. I think Amin or Sachib?
Yes, you can call me as Amin or Saqib as you wish.
Oh, Saqib. Okay, great. So you're the last one. Welcome.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you for a nice sharing. Okay, let me share my screen at first. So first of all, am I audible clearly?
Not yet. I think it's soon. Okay, great.
And can you hear me clearly? Am I right? Am I audible?
Yeah.
Okay. So, and the slides are not visible.
Yeah, it's very clear. So I can start.
So thank you very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, I'd like to express my gratitude to the session chair for giving me the floor to talk. My name is Saqib Amin, and I'm working in the School of Business and Economics at Southwestern University, Dhaka, Bangladesh. I'd like to thank the editors, especially Professor Farhad Taghizadeh, for inviting me in this webinar and to contribute the upcoming book titled Handbook of Energy Policy. The topic of my today's presentation is how vulnerable is the Bangladesh economy to the oil price shocks. My co-authors of this book chapter is Dr. Laura Marsilian and Dr. Thomas Renstrom from Dayong University Business School, United Kingdom, and Dr. Farhad Taghizadeh from Tokai University, Japan. As you know that the macroeconomic effects of So as you know that the macroeconomic effects of the oil price shocks have been extensively examined in the energy literature, even since the first oil crisis that we have faced in 1973. Evidence from the literature suggests that there exist multiple channels of transmission through which the oil price can affect the macroeconomy. It is expected that, for example, the higher oil price reduces the discretionary income of the consumers since they are left with less money to spend after paying the high energy bills. If you look at the producer's perspective, oil price shock can also affect the farm's decisions regarding the substitution of oil as an input in the production process with the other productive inputs like capital and labor hiring. In addition, substitution of oil with capital in the production process might influence decisions on capital accumulation, which may eventually lead to long-run economic consequences. Okay, and if you look at the existing literature, you can classify them between two categories. I would rather say empirical literature, and on the other hand, like theoretical literature. So the oil price shocks in the 70s and 80s generated a wave of empirical literature, investigating the relationship between the oil economic output nexus. On the other hand, the theoretical studies have investigated different channels through which energy or oil price can affect the macroeconomy. But one feature is common. What is that feature? One common feature is that most of the previous studies has a tendency to focus on the developed countries, either USA or the other European countries. You can find a very few literature where you can see they're examining how oil price shocks impact on a mixed economy in a developing or emerging country like Bangladesh. So this is neglected, and this is also sort of the research gap we have identified. So now moving on, energy crisis actually remained one of the unresolved problem of Bangladesh since its independence in 1971, as you always saw a sizable gap between the demand and supply of electricity. I can give you a quick example. Between 2000 and 2009, demand for electricity always exceeded supply by 2000 megawatt on an average. And there was another feature of the Bangladesh energy sector was the reliance of the natural gas, dependency on heavy reliance on the natural gas. As we can see, 90%, more than 90% of electricity was generated from natural gas. So what happened actually in 2009, the Bangladesh government introduced the quick rental power plants, okay, as a short-term solution to mitigate the then persistent energy crisis and also to expedite the fuel diversification process. And it became a very success. The quick rental power plants, were widely acknowledged during that time to be a short-term solution in many countries like Africa, India, Pakistan, UAE, and we have seen, the policy of introducing the quick rental power plants was a success, and which also helped the economy to grow over 6% during the last, one decade. However, the addition of these quick rental power plants has increased the usage of imported oil by almost 400% over the last 10 years. You can see in the slide in 2009. So this is the furnace oil and high-speed diesel. The share of imported oil, imported, Bangladesh could not generate. So this imported petroleum, share of this imported petroleum is only 5% in the generation, 87% from natural gas. If you look at the latest scenario in 2020, it is almost 34%. So you can see that changes. So a huge change. And if you look at the literature, so I myself with my colleagues try to investigate the possible, effect of removal of the fuel subsidy, the pricing, mechanism that is controlled by the government in case the government is going to go introduce the price initiatives, how it is going to affect the Bangladesh economy and energy sector. In addition to that, since we mainly import, more than 95% oil is imported from the rest of the world, so we are very much exposed to the other countries. Any sort of fluctuation in the oil price can have an effect towards the energy sector as well as the economy. So we actually find that Bangladesh economy is typically vulnerable to oil price shocks, as high oil prices can harm the household welfare, as there is a reduction in their income, which also reduce the overall different types of consumption and in a greater scenario economic output. It is also expected that the results in terms of macroeconomic effects of oil price shocks will be mixed under different policy scenarios. We have identified different scenarios, so we aim to report the effects of oil price shocks under different scenarios, such as if we are going to shutting down the private companies in the business industrial sector, if we are closing down the quick rental companies, in case we are allowing the private companies to directly be connected with the national grid, if we remove the fossil fuel subsidies and introducing the pricing reforms, encouraging the regulatory framework, introducing carbon taxes. So all these possible scenarios, the results of all these possible scenarios are going to include in this book chapter. And you can see there are very few literature actually focused on Bangladesh economy. Timilsna et al. 2017, Gunatilake, Roland House 2013, Hossein et al., Shah et al. So they actually try to investigate the possible impact of the oil price towards Bangladesh economy, and sort of except Gunatilake and Roland House, the remaining other studies found a negative relationship between the oil price and GDP. To be honest, they tried with different scenario, and it is revealed that higher oil price can have the potential to reduce the economic output, as well as it can affect the food security, also increase the inflation rate. So conclusion, the recommendation that we are going to propose from this book chapter are expected to guide the policymakers to carefully assess how the energy market reform and the oil price shocks or energy price shocks affects the productions, the different macroeconomic key variables, subsidies, households welfare, with the overall impact of accurate welfare comparisons, and overall ensuring equity across the different types of household. We also aim to recommend that the government should reconsider replacing imported oil with the indigenous energy sources, especially scaling up the renewables, okay, to avoid any sort of negative consequences of oil price shocks. They actually also might consider adopting price reform policies, including carbon taxes, to achieve the double goals of mitigating the effects of oil price shocks and achieve the Paris Agreement commitment of reducing greenhouse gas emission by 15%. Okay, so I am thanking all of you for your attention. These are the selected references I used to prepare this presentation. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Sakib. So I think it's a presentation for the session. So it's now the discussion section. So all the authors, including me, welcome the questions.
Okay, thank you very much to all presenters for their interesting presentations. So I have some comments. So the first presentation was by Dr. Karim. So it was interesting, and it's interesting contribution. Thank you very much. Yes, I also agree with your concept that when we are talking about green, it doesn't necessarily means solar or wind and so on. So we can include nuclear, but by consideration of the safety matters. So after Fukushima nuclear disaster in Japan in March 2011, so the global interest toward nuclear power changed and damaged, and especially from the side of people. So still many governments are interested in promoting and developing nuclear project, but because of the prevention from the side of people, this is not so much interesting. So it would be more interesting if you include in your chapter that how to utilize the AI for increasing the safety matters, because nuclear is very commercial, very economical, cost is very low, and also it is possible, I mean, lots of challenges which are existing for renewable energy. For nuclear, those challenges are not existing, but how to utilize new technologies, especially AI, because your chapter is on AI, for increasing the safety matters. This is first thing. And secondly, how to utilize new technologies and AI for increasing the social trust, because for nuclear, trust is a matter. How to increase the trust? For example, in Japan, I'm in Japan, I see that government is interested to resume nuclear, but people are opposing because of trust. So how to make it clear for them that these new technologies are trustable? So Dayong's chapter is also interesting. Biofuel is very important. Biofuel policy is very important. One point that I haven't seen in your presentation, but it is very important, is food, because biofuel is related to food, and many studies in the literature, including one paper that I published in Energy Policy, so showed that there is a clear linkages between biofuel prices and food security. So many government or many movements which are opposing biofuels, the reason that they are mentioning is that it is endangering the food supply and food security, especially in vulnerable countries and vulnerable economies. So please consider reviewing those studies that look at food matter and the relationship between biofuel policy and food. Regarding Dr. Yu's chapter, this is also very interesting, and experience of China in the electricity market reform is interesting. So my suggestion on your chapter, my comment on your chapter is that please bring the what lessons we can learn from the Chinese experiences in the market reform, in electricity market reform, especially after 2002, that China established SPCC, and reforms started from that time. On the other hand, we cannot say that China reached to the optimal level. China also is improving, needs to be improved. In the power sector, there are lots of challenges. Demand is increasing in China, power supply, pollution, still the generation is based on fossil fuel pollutions, and this needs to be considered. Another thing that I haven't seen in your abstract is SOEs, state-owned companies. Majority of the power companies, power sector in China, especially the grid control, power trade, is running by SOEs, running by state-owned enterprises, and pricing tariff setting mechanism is also not very clear. That what are the mechanisms, because in China, tariff setting is by central government and also by the local governments, so not by these SOEs. So for example, SPCC doesn't have so much influence in the tariff. So at the same time that reforming the electricity market, SOE reforms also need to be done. So I have a book along with my co-editor on reforming state-owned enterprises. This is also published by Springer. So we have chapters on power market. I hope it be useful for your chapter. So please also cite this book.
Thank you. Yeah. No problem.
Thank you. And Dr. Haqbin's, Dr. Shujai and Mr. Haqbin's chapter. So this is also interesting. Power distribution is interesting. So the comment that I have is that instead of focusing on one case, instead of focusing on case of one company, for example, Shiraz, please widen your view. And because the optimal districting in electricity distribution company EDC is very important, and I think your chapter would be more interesting if you consider this matter, that what is the optimal system, whether a centralized power company or a regional in different region in a country, or prefectural, provincial. So this would be interesting. For example, in Japan, we have a regional power company. In Tokyo area, we have TEPCO, which even the grid is not connected to the neighbor province. So each region has its own infrastructure even, and we don't have a national grid in the country. So, but I don't want to say that this is the optimal system. Maybe we don't have one remedy for all countries. Of course, we don't have one remedy for the world. So it needs to be depending on the geographical situation, economic situation, development stages of different regions. But if you review the literature, different cases, different countries that have centralized, regional, provincial, prefectural system of power distribution, then it would be interesting for the reader. So instead of just focusing on one case of Shiraz, please widen your scope. Thank you very much. So Dayong.
Okay, thank you very much. I think Farhad have given quite comprehensive comments. I will try to. I think I will start from backwards, right? So I think the last paper on Bangladesh oil shocks thing, it's important. So I think there are a lot of works. I personally did some works on oil shocks, on economy and things. There are a vast volume of literature, but yes, there are not much about Bangladesh, and especially I think when I look at your presentation, it's really imported oil is I think it's more than 3/4 of the energy use in Bangladesh. The situation is over there, but I would be more interested, instead of having this kind of analysis on how much oil shocks going to affect the Bangladesh economy, I would like to see more about the policy the Bangladesh governments have in responding to any of these kind of things. Say, for example, like when you face like 75% of imported oil, then how the government shape their policies to make sure they are secure against any kind of shocks. So those sort of things I would like to see more, instead of technical things, because this area, if you talk about kind of relationship between oil shock and economy, I think there's quite a lot of, I think lots more work that's been done. I think people understand what's going on there, but policy-wise, it's not very clear to people. I'm not quite sure about Iran's case, but I think Farhad has a good point, and he knows more. I'm sure these kind of comments should be able to help solving the problem. I particularly like the I think the energy policy, energy efficiency issue on India. I think I like this idea of having a good timelines, trying to go back from the history and trying to look at, in what kind of strategies the India government has been implemented to improve efficiency across the time. But one of the biggest thing is because I've seen that we have another India study talking about sustainable energy policy. I think there's kind of overlapping here. I hope that we could have some kind of differences between these two papers. I think, for example, here, energy efficiency is the key thing. How much should we take climate action into consideration? Maybe less on that aspects, but more on this kind of the history of the policy, or evolving, how this policy evolves over time, and how this evolving of policies affecting energy efficiency in India. I think that's something interesting. I want to see a bit more about the first paper, AI, nuclear. So you're touching two interesting points. AI is obviously something very interesting in energy sector. We try to bring information technology and digital technology into the energy sector. That's going to change the world quite a lot. But nuclear is very controversial. I think I agree with Farhad. In Japan, that's since Fukushima, there's a lot of discussion, lots of dispute there. And I think this is something, a lot of things, apart from legal issues or security issues, there are lots of controversial. Like if I remember correctly, Germany decided to quit nuclear completely next year. So what will be the signal to the market? But see, there are still countries relying on nuclear, and nuclear is important. Because to me, I think renewables, if you want to say we have carbon neutral in 2060 or 2050 or in many other countries, that means a large volume of energy supply has to be replaced by renewables. But I mean, from the foreseeable future, I don't really see what kind of technology can allow this like solar, wind to replace these fossil fuels. Nuclear may be an option, but the controversies remains in security and other moral issues behind, or legal issues behind nuclear development has to be discussed. Well, I think I'm really looking forward to see more on this chapter, but obviously there's much more to think about it. But anyway, thank you very much. I think we have something very interesting, a good combination and everything. And thank you very much.
Thanks, Farhad and Dayong. So I think the session is perfectly done. So I think we'll go move to the last section, wrap up. So maybe Farhad.
Can I have a quick question for the India
sure.
chapter on energy efficiency? Sorry for interrupting.
Sure, please.
Yeah, this is Gopal Sarangi. I was just listening all the presentations, even though I have presented my presentation. Just wondering that, yeah, in the energy efficiency chapter, there's been a lot of, I mean, it's an interesting chapter which is basically being developed in the context of India. My understanding is that maybe Professor Farhad and Professor Dayong can better advise about the construct of the chapter. But my understanding is that there is a lot of, I mean, there is not been very responsive from the household side as far as the energy efficiency is concerned. But particularly, there are behavioral issues. I think if some of the policy recommendations will be in line with behavioral issues, behavioral economics point of view, that would definitely add strength to the chapter, along with the 3 points that have been made by authors. One is they're looking at the energy and emission savings, looking at the monetary savings, and they're also looking at the success factors and challenges. I think if they bring in the behavioral aspects, which is very, very critical if you really look at whether energy efficiency is attained or achieved, that would be definitely a strength to the chapter. Thanks for allowing me this to speak about that. Thank you so much.
Hello, Farhad, this is Bhaskar Natarajan from India. Hello.
Hello.
Can you hear me? Yes.
Hello, yes.
Yes, very important point has been made just now. While we will certainly include this as a part of the chapter that we are putting together, I may just want to mention that officially from the Bureau of Energy Efficiency or the ministry side, there has been very little that has really been done on the behavioral aspect of energy efficiency. But there are some organizations, and AEEE is one of them. They have done their own small bits of work on behavioral aspects in partnership with some key utilities. We will certainly include this, but also try to see if there are any other organizations that have looked at the behavioral aspect. Because while this is important in electricity, it is equally more so important in the case of LPG. India has connected almost 80 million households to LPG in the last 4 to 5 years. And there is a huge challenge in terms of behavioral energy consumption patterns. Thank you so much for raising this issue, and we will certainly include this in the. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for considering this. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Yu and speakers for presenting your chapter. So with this, we almost reached to the end of today's sessions and the webinar. So just let me have some points on the chapter preparation. So you have received a guideline for writing the chapter. Please follow that guideline, especially for the word count, because this is a requirement from the publisher side that minimum 10,000 words and maximum 12,000 words needs to be the word count. This is required. So the whole handbook is going to be almost 1,000 pages. So this is a requirement that we have, and otherwise it wouldn't be a handbook. So this is needed, and we need to follow the word count. And this is one point. Secondly, regarding the submission time that you have been informed earlier, is end of January 2022. And in a few weeks later, you will receive information you will receive the submission window. It is through the Springer system. It's called Meteor system of Springer, that it's not through email. You don't need to send me or Dayong by email. So you will receive a link through Springer that your submission is through there. And the editing process also up to the publishing is through there. And then through this system, you will have access to the book. And I think you will have access to other handbooks of Springer, since you are contributing to a reference book. So you will have free access to other handbooks of Springer as well. So this is a point. And I hope that the comments that we all received throughout these 2 days webinar help us to enhance the quality of our work and producing a work to be useful forever for everyone. Okay, thank you very much. Dayong, do you want to say something?
Yeah, well, that's thank you very much for all the contributors. It's really I think we have a very good combination of topics and good distribution of regional representative, and so we have a lot of things to look forward. I think this is really I mean, it's just like we hope we can get something like bestsellers, and at least we're trying to establish a book that is being useful. All right, so this is a very minimum thing that but I think this is the most important thing, that our handbook will become some useful guidance for people who are not specialized in this area, and hopefully the policymakers and many other people, they will take that ahead. And but all up to our work, so there's a lot of works in the next few months time, so I look forward to getting your work, and thank you very much again.
Thank you. And just the last point, I just shared the link to the video of yesterday's sessions, and for today also it's recorded, and I will upload it into the same channel tomorrow. And I also share the group photo that we had yesterday, so you're welcome to share it in your networks and in your social media. Thank you very much. Take care of yourself.
Thank you.